Hello world, it's Godzilla with you once again. Hope you're all doing well. Today I got another video for you guys. A news update on the next Godzilla Kong Monsterverse film. The sequel to Godzilla X Kong as far as we know. So, a few weeks ago I spoke about how we have a writer already for the film, who actually was one of the original writers, or one of the writers who did the early drafts for Godzilla 2014, and he also wrote for Shang-Chi. And also, I had mentioned that it was being discussed if Adam Wingard was going to return or not, but it wasn't looking very likely that he'd be available anytime soon, as he was already doing a film with A24. Well, in that time, it's been confirmed that Adam Wingard will not be returning for the next film, at least at this point, because he's busy doing his movie with A24, as I discussed. But what we do have now is at least a story breaking out that we have a director for the next film. Again, before I get into this, I'm just going to say that this stuff can change a lot. So, this is what they're saying. However, as time goes on, as production goes on, the plans and schedules could change. So, let's see what happens. Right? As the film hasn't gone into production yet, so it could change. I know, like, for example, that there's a new Jurassic Park movie coming out, and the director left the project. And now Gareth Edwards, yes, the director of Godzilla 2014, is now directing it. So these things could change. So I think I'll believe this once we're in production, and we get more news on this. But anyway, let's get to what the news is saying. So apparently, this was an exclusive, I think, from the Hollywood Reporter. That the Godzilla X Kong sequel will be directed by a Grant Sputore. Apparently he did the sci-fi film I Am Mother, which I don't know anything about. And apparently it was released on Netflix. It's 2019. So it's according to this, the sequel has confirmed his lead director, a newcomer to the Monsterverse. The Hollywood Reporter has confirmed Grant Sputore or Sputor will be taking over as director of the sequel. But yeah, he made this film I Am Mother. I've not seen it before, so I may have to check it out. We'll have to see. My main thing is, and here they kind of talk about how, Godzilla X Kong was a hit. I think it's like the second highest. It's very close to Skull Island's box office. It's really close. It's like almost a few million away, I think, from being the highest grossing Monsterverse film as of this moment. Like, I'm wondering, actually, let me look it up. Because I think it is. I'm pretty sure it is. Oh my goodness. It's like a million away from being the highest grossing Monsterverse film. Godzilla X Kong. Yeah. It's a million away. It's like Skull Island has 568 million worldwide, and New Empire has 567. So, like, very, very close. Even though Skull Island came out in 2017, so adjusted for inflation, it's probably more successful. But that's beyond the point. Anyway, it's a big hit. It was a hit with Adam Wingard, and regardless of if you like Godzilla vs. Kong and Godzilla X Kong, right? I just don't like switching directors in the middle of a trilogy. I don't think that's the best thing to do. And of course, this isn't Legendary's fault. This isn't Adam Wingard's fault. Like, I don't blame the guy. The guy wants to make his own movie. This is, he doesn't maybe want to continue making more of these films. You know what? That's okay. That's absolutely fine. And Legendary doesn't want to wait for him. That's okay too. It's one of those tough things where, like, yeah, like, you want to make your own movie, and Legendary doesn't want to wait for you, and they want to make another sequel. It's like a scheduling conflict, which that sucks, but at the same time, like, it happens. But I just worried that, like, these last two films were very heavily dependent on Adam Wingard, and his vision. Whether you like them or not, Adam Wingard was kind of responsible for their style and their vision. And they're not, especially Godzilla X Kong is not perfect. It has its issues, but I'm just worried about who will replace Adam Wingard um, to follow up this film. So, but yeah, there's now this Grant guy, and I've not heard of or seen I Am Mother, and I think some other people said like, who's this guy? Maybe I'll check it out, But look, nobody knew who Gareth Edwards was, right? Nobody knew. I didn't know who Jordan Vogt Roberts was, or Michael Dougherty, or Adam Wingard. Like none of the directors of the MonsterVerse before they made their film, I had no idea who they were, right? So that doesn't mean that they'll make a bad movie. Um, so I guess that's kind of like where we go to the discussion of this. Like, um, it's kind of hard because I don't know much about this director. I don't really know what to say, but I will kind of say I'll touch on what I kind of said before when I was talking about if Adam Wingard leaves, in that I hope we get somebody who's going to be, a similar style or be able to pick up this trilogy and finish it. If you to finish it, then can end it correctly, because for me that's key. Like there's a certain style and feeling to Godzilla versus Kong and Godzilla X Kong that I'm worried that if they get in a new direction as a completely different vision, it's just gonna like all of a sudden change the momentum. It will feel weird. Like one can argue that that kind of already happened, right? If you look at Godzilla 2014 and then Godzilla versus Kong, they're two very different movies, obviously, but there was more time leading up to that. Whereas like this is like a direct sequel to Godzilla X Kong New Empire. I hope they don't too much of a direct shift. On the other hand, it might be a great film, right? It might be really good. It might be, maybe it could bring the films back a bit more serious, more interesting human characters. Maybe bring in like a classic villain. Maybe make the tone a little more dark and serious and realistic. But I don't think they'll go too far. I've said this before, right? Like Godzilla X Kong was successful because I think it was more silly and fun. I think that's part of the reason why it was such a big box office hit. For those who want like a Godzilla 2014 style film, I don't know if that's necessarily what they're going to do. They might make it a bit darker, but I still think they're going to keep it fun and silly, because that's what brings people to the theaters to go see these movies, right? And the audience, right? Like, and the toys. They're aiming more for a younger demographic with these films. So I think for people who are like, oh, we're going to get like Godzilla 2014 style dark movie, I doubt it. Like, I think this is going to be, I don't think Legendary would go that angle with this. I think they want to keep it more like somewhere between Godzilla, more like Godzilla versus Kong, which was more fun and silly, but I think Godzilla X Kong was almost too fun and silly. It went a little too far, right? I think they'd want to. And again, if it's the end of the trilogy, it probably should be a bit more dark and emotional anyway, right? Kind of bringing everything together, um, which is fine. But do not expect a Godzilla -1 or a Godzilla 2014 style dark and serious, realistic film. They may be more inspired by, they may go more in that direction, but it's still a Godzilla and Kong movie. It's still going to be lots of action, big battles, explosions, silly stuff. Um, but I do wonder what they'll kind of do with the story, right? And direction. Like, are they going to kind of finish the Monsterverse as it is? Like, everything kind of has to wrap up, right? Like, right, that's what it feels like. You have to kind of wrap up. Well, I mean, I don't know, because like Godzilla X Kong kind of did that anyway, right? It kind of, and Godzilla X Kong, interestingly enough, they didn't do any post-credit sequence. They didn't build up to anything. They just finished off the story. Kong is now the king of the apes in the Hollow Earth, and Godzilla's on the surface, sleeping in the Colosseum, keeping the Titans in line. Like, everything's kind of okay. And there was no post-credit sequence. There was no build-up of a greater villain. Nothing. So it's just like, well, what now? And I think that's what a lot of people are saying. Like, what would the next film even be about? And it's either they bring in like aliens, as some people have said. They bring in like a classic Toho villain. Maybe bring in Godzilla's son. I think it's going to have to be aliens or a classic Toho villain, I think, is going to be key. Yeah, I think I've said this before when I did my review about Godzilla X Kong and my issues with Scar King as a villain. I think we need a more scary villain. I think one of the best villains in this franchise was King Ghidorah from King of the Monsters. Don't get me wrong, Mechagodzilla was scary, but also Mechagodzilla was just King Ghidorah, actually, technically. So, but Mechagodzilla was not a big part of Godzilla versus Kong. And I think we need another really scary villain. I think that's what will be key. And I think we need an emotional, point to this film. That's what I'm saying. Like maybe kind of something that ends the MonsterVerse, shall we say, like a end of an era. If this is kind of like Avengers Endgame, right? Maybe they need to kill off one of the main titans. Like, should Godzilla die? Um, or does Kong die, right? Like, maybe something like that would be kind of what is necessary to give this whole franchise like an emotional depth. I don't know. I kind of hope they don't kill off Kong because Kong has died so many times. Maybe they could kill off Godzilla. Like, I know some people wouldn't like that, but it would be kind of cool, and that's why they bring in Godzilla's son, maybe. Or, I don't know. I feel like it needs to be something like that. Like, either Godzilla or Kong needs to die. Don't kill Mothra because Mothra's died so many times. I don't know. People said that Kong was going to die. They say Godzilla X Kong is going to be, like, really emotional and dark, and Kong might die. We didn't get that at all. But maybe this film... I don't know. I don't know if I want to see Kong die again. He's died so many times. But at the same time, can you kill Godzilla? Maybe this new Titan or threat they face might be so powerful. So we'll have to see. At this point, there's nothing else in terms of release date or story information. It's just all we have is a writer and a director announced. This is super, super, super early in the process, right? Probably the script is underway in development, but this is early, so we have no real information. Production might start in a year or two, and then we might. I've kind of said already. Probably looking at if we're looking at 3 years between each film, like has been the previous case, then probably 2027 will be a release date. So production maybe next year, maybe 2026, and then release in 2027. So for now, we know nothing about this film or what it will entail. And we'll have to see if also we get some news on Legacy of Monsters. Because don't forget that there's going to be a season 2 of Legacy of Monsters and spin-offs. So I'm wondering if those spin-offs will also start to tell other stories. And yeah, so that's kind of it. There's not really much to say. I don't know much about this director. I'm really hoping that, like, it could be good or it could be bad. I'm hoping they can kind of change some things in the Monsterverse because New Empire was like, it started kind of going a little too far in some ways. So I'm hoping they can kind of pull back a little bit. But I'm also hoping it doesn't go too far. Like, they make it totally different from the last 2 films because it's like these movies have kind of had a certain style. I don't think they should change it completely either. But we'll see. Only the time will tell. And again, like I said, this is the Hollywood Reporter, but news could change. Right? Next month, it could be a different director. So we'll see. I don't know if I'll take this too seriously until they're in production. And we get a release date. We get a plot description. Everything. That's when I'll kind of maybe take this news a little bit more seriously. But anyway, that's my thoughts on this. What do you all think? Have you guys seen this I Am Mother film? I've never heard of it. So do you think this guy could be a good director? Again, if you're like, oh, well, I don't know. I mean, nobody knew who Gareth Edwards was either, before he did Godzilla 2014. So I didn't know who Adam Wingard was before Godzilla vs. Kong. So I'm not going to sit here and judge a director that I don't know because they could end up making a really good film. So I'm not going to judge them. Also, a lot of it has to do with the writing, right? It's the writing as well. It's more to blame oftentimes than the director. So anyway, that's my thoughts. Yeah, love to know what you guys think. Yeah. And I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.